911 Omaha.
I came home, and my mom and I got into an argument, and she started beating me, and she grabbed a knife. I don't know what happened, man.
Is there anybody there with her?
No, nobody's there. It was just me and her. She's hurt.
She's stabbed in the chest over at her house, right?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Alyssa Ryder.
All right, you just stay there, and we'll get some help over to your mom's house, too.
This upscale neighborhood in southwest Omaha is in shock after a family dispute ends in
A
death.
41-year-old woman was found in the backyard of this house, stabbed in the chest and clinging for life.
At this point, they have no idea what led up to the fight, no evidence of abuse.
Apparently, the 15-year-old boy is a suspect in his mother's stabbing.
Statements were made by several young people that Brett had talked about killing his mother.
On February 18th, 1993, my 15-year-old brother Brett killed our mother, and our family's darkest secret came to light.
Every time she beat me up, I felt like she could kill me. She just got that murderous look in her eye, you know? She just looks so mean.
I don't think someone could have recognized her as being Claudia. She would just look completely evil and horrible.
All you could see on her face was just hatred, you know, rage. Like she just hated me.
She turned on him. She wasn't there anymore as that nurturing mother, but she was a villain.
Sometimes she said, don't you ever tell anybody.
She was pushing him over the edge every day, and he was just barely holding on.
I just felt like I had to put an end to it, you know? And it just had to stop.
How long can you tolerate that day in and day out until you finally just come to a point where you just snap and say, it's you or me.
6 months after Mom died, Brett went on trial for her murder.
And what are you guys going through right now? I mean,
A lot of turmoil, a lot of pain.
All Dad and I could do was hope and pray that the judge would understand, the way we did, how this happened.
Alyssa, how was your reaction to this?
I just can't wait to get my brother back. But I didn't get my brother back. Brett was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced as an adult to 11 to 20 years. For the past 2.5 years, he's been here at Lincoln Correctional Center, a maximum security prison for violent criminals.
Turn your face to the wall. Hands on each side up, please.
Every time I visit Brett, it breaks my heart because I know he doesn't belong here. He was just a good kid who was trapped in a desperate situation. I'm making this film because I want to explain how the secrets we kept destroyed our family. How they pushed my brother, who never hurt anyone in his life, to do the terrible thing he did.
Brett, did you ever want to just explain yourself, either at trial or afterward?
I thought that was all I had to do, you know?
Yeah, just...
I said if I just say what happened, you know,
tell the truth.
Tell them the truth. I would have told them the state of mind I was in, you know, what drove me to that point, you know, continuous beating, you know, from when I was little. All that added up, you know. I couldn't trust my mom. I didn't even see her as my mom anymore. Mm-hmm. And eventually she just took it too far, you know. Yeah. And my mind just broke and it happened.
If you could have told her anything in her life, what would it have been?
I would have told her that what she was doing was wrong. I don't think there was anything I could have said to her that would have helped anything, you know?
Yeah.
I never understood.
Right. I didn't either. After a while, I just stopped trying to and just figured that she was just gonna get mad about everything, you know? So I was always expecting her to get angry no matter what I did.
Yeah.
I'm the only person who really knows what Mom did to Brett, how her constant daily battering pushed him over the edge. I understand how he bottled up all his anger and pain and never fought back until that one day. It's hard for Brett to talk about it, and I'm trying to help him, but my own feelings about Mom are still so raw, so ambivalent.
sorry I don't come out here more often. I just can't. Because you're so dead. And you were so mean to me. You were so mean to Brett. I don't think she understood how much she was hurting Brett and hurting me. I don't think anyone in their right mind could understand how much they were hurting someone like that and keep going on doing the same thing.
It's hard to understand what went wrong in Mom's life. She seemed to have everything she ever wanted. She and Dad were high school sweethearts in South Dakota. They were married for 3 years when I came along. Soon Brett was born and we were the all-American family. We moved to a big house in Omaha, Nebraska when Dad got a job as an investment banker. Mom was a nurse and a church volunteer, and we were pillars of the community. Image was everything to Mom, and we were the picture-perfect family. No one could have guessed that everything in Mom's life wasn't what it seemed.
What was Mom like when you first fell in love and got married?
Oh, I thought she was just the sweetest, most innocent little girl in the world. And she was very attractive, very popular, and a great personality.
Were you proud of the way everyone else admired Mom?
Oh, yes, very proud. Yeah, she was...
No one knew her, though. Everyone loved her.
Yeah, she was a good worker, you know. Everybody respected her, and her friends loved her and would share intimate things with her about life, and she just always helped others, but she never would share anything about herself.
Right. Carol, what was Mom like? I was her kid, but you were her sister and friend. What was she like?
Yeah, I always considered her my friend. She was always there when I needed her.
There's the mother of the pumpkin. Yeah. There's a pumpkin.
But I thought that she was so strict with you. She wanted you to be perfect. She wanted Brett to be perfect. You had to have perfect grades. He had to be a superstar athlete. You had to be musician of the year. Everything you did had to be perfect and look perfect. She never allowed you to make a mistake and learn from it. And when you got big enough to sort of strive and even demand some independence, she used her physical power to stop that.
Take your head off.
I knew that she wanted to look like a perfect mother, so I figured the way to make her look perfect was to make us look perfect. And the way to make us look perfect was to discipline us, you know. And so we would get all perfect grades, you know, be in everything at school, and, you know, and never tell anybody that she was beating us up, you know.
She just lived a sort of double life. She's a wonderful actress. She just took care of everybody around the community, and then within her own house, she was just crazy. What provoked Mom?
Any little thing could provoke her, but it always escalated, you know, into a beating or whatever. What she'd do is she'd grab me with her left hand and she'd just hit me like this with her right hand. Or, you know, she'd bend me over and hit me in the back of the head and stuff.
And she'd just be this rage and just clawing and pounding, and then the doorbell would ring, or the phone would ring again. She'd go pick it up, and then she'd be, within seconds, just perfect.
It was kind of like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, It was like she didn't know what she was doing. One time, I was sitting on the floor taking off my shoes, and my mom didn't like my shoes either. She said my shoes were making me mean, or making me evil. And when I was sitting there on the floor, she started kicking me in my back and my kidneys and stuff, and hit me in the head.
She would get so pissed off, and she would just fly into you.
He did something wrong. He's got to be hurt right now. She'd come after you.
She would just look completely evil and horrible and hateful.
And ugly,
Yeah.
Her whole face would just change, so, I knew, it was scary looking.
Yeah.
I know, it was scary to think, to see how fast Mom's face could just, contort and be just like she's just concentrating on hurting you,
When did you notice a change in her, in the way she treated us?
It was so gradual, it just came on over such a long period of time. It was really hard to know. But I think it was probably kind of when you first went to junior high, and she just became so much more concerned about, boys and who you might like and who, what you were doing.
Alyssa went on her first date.
Yeah, a boy came over and picked Alyssa up at 7:30 this morning for a date. They're going to go to a debate all day. He's a nice boy.
She could be yelling at me about bad grades or about my messy room, and then she'd be calling me a whore and a slut and all these things. It just didn't make sense.
There's Alyssa. She's being a floozy.
Why do you think you were so afraid of Mom, even when you were old enough to stand up to her?
Whatever you said would come back to you, So you couldn't really ever tell her what was really going on in your life.
Yeah.
That would just feed her, fuel her fire later on.
Yeah.
You could never get close to her, You could never talk to her like a normal kid talks to his father or mother,
You were criticized for everything we did and had no choices. She really crippled us, at least temporarily, emotionally, I think. It's hard to, neither one of us got a chance to grow up emotionally. She was just always knocking us down.
Brett, put on your rally hat. What? Put on your rally hat.
I know that.
Doesn't he look totally stupid?
Mom would call me names so much, and it became a routine thing for me to hear from Mom that I was worthless and no good, and dumb. Well, I started to believe that, that's the kind of effect it had on me, hearing it from my own mom,
But no one else did anything like that to me, or even gave the slightest hint that they thought I was stupid and worthless and no good, Everyone else liked me. It's just her.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought was really messed up, I was like, how come my mom, doesn't see that, I think I'm a pretty good kid, everybody else likes me.
Everybody else does.
Brett was a good kid, by anyone's standards. He always did well in school, he was the leader of our youth group at church, and he was a wonderful all-around athlete. But nothing he did was good enough for Mom.
I was in all these hard classes, but if I didn't bring home all A's every quarter, it was just the end of the world for her, I always thought child abuse was something that, like, a drunken dad came home from the bar and beat up his kids. That's what I thought child abuse was. I didn't think it was your mom, beating you up. over your grades. I thought that was just something moms probably did, just trying to make their kids right, so they had to enforce rules somehow.
I need a close-up of your face.
I thought of myself kind of like I was a bad kid. I was always doing something so wrong, you know, that I had to be physically punished.
Show me your braces. Not that close. Okay. Time for bed. It's 8:15. The end. Good night.
She regulated my life. I felt trapped. I felt controlled. I felt like, you know, I was just imprisoned.
Dad, do you think Mom had any idea what she was doing to Brett, how she was turning him against her?
Boy, I think she was so obsessed with the strictness again and having you do the right thing that she probably, because I know there were times when I would say, what do you think you're doing to their brains, you know? I mean, you're really, you know, and their self-esteem, and you're driving them crazy.
Here she is. Pre-prom. Curly hair. Backless dress. Long, 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 long. Bare feet. Toothpaste. Good idea. You don't brush your teeth in a formal. Generally. I know that. You've been fixing her hair for 3 hours. I'm not.
Not until recently have I felt like a whole person, like someone that could take care of myself. Because Mom did everything for me. She picked out classes and activities starting in junior high, starting forever ago, before that.
What you gonna be when you grow up? Where are you gonna go to school? Did you get your UP assignment done?
She always said, you know, if you're going to be a teacher, be a professor, and if you're going to be a nurse, be a doctor, you know. So I just thought, you're a nurse, I'll be a doctor, and you'll be happy for me. And, you know, you'll say, I have a daughter who's a doctor.
What?
I'm going to be a doctor. Mom, come on. Making me paranoid.
Waiting for debate.
Oh.
What do you think my dad's role was in all of this?
He wasn't there. He wasn't there because he traveled with his job. He later told me that because she was so hard to live with, he stayed away extra nights. There would be a night that he could have come home, but he didn't want to because she was so hard to be around. Those are the nights I resent him for. If he has to work, fine, but when he just chooses to stay away and leave you kids with her, that was really wrong.
Did you ever think that she might be abusing Brett and me when you weren't around?
You know, now that I look back, I think how stupid I must have been not to think that. I guess I was in some kind of form of denial or something, because when I was gone and busy, and I'd call home and she'd just be mad at you about something that didn't get done, or mad at Brett, and I'd just think, well, she's always upset because she just can't tolerate anything that, you know, isn't perfect, and never would stop to think about maybe you guys had been, you know, beat on or yelled and screamed at and things like that. I just never ever thought that was going on day in and day out. Just didn't realize that.
Yeah. What about Dad? Where was Dad? A lot of times he wasn't even at the house, right?
Right. Dad was doing his business.
He was doing his work. When he was home, where was he? And Mom was screaming at you.
Dad would sit off to the side and kind of just let things go, you know what I mean?
I mean, Mom was clearly off kilter. And Dad didn't protect us from her.
When Mom started going crazy, Dad would step in. He did that for me. I don't know if he
did it for me one time,
too.
Brett.
Yeah, but that was when Mom was getting ready to kill you, you know? That one time, you know, when Mom was kicking me in the kidneys and stuff, that's when Dad stepped in there.
I don't think you and I had a real chance to figure out that there was something wrong. I just always believed what Dad said, you know, that's how Mom is.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to deal with it. There's nothing we can do. I'm not trying to shift the blame. I'm trying to point out that you and I were kids. We grew up with a mom like that. She was our mom. Dad married her, and he was a grown-up when he married her. And then he watched her change. And he had to know that it was wrong for her to do the things she did. And he had to know that she was doing them when he wasn't there, too.
Well, he didn't know what to do. He didn't understand it, you know? He didn't understand what was going on. He was just like one of the kids. I'm not going to understand that.
I guess my point is that he wasn't one of the kids, Brett. He was supposed to be taking care of us, too.
I'm sure that if Dad could have, in his mind, I'm sure he would have done something to help us. I'm sure of it. But he couldn't do it in his mind. He couldn't. He was caught in a trap just like we were. It doesn't matter to me if he was an adult or not. It doesn't.
There's Brett. He never gives up. He always thinks it's going to get better. And there's Alyssa.
Things were definitely not getting any better.
There's the mother. And there's the daughter.
Mom was getting sicker and sicker. Even when I went away to college, she still controlled my life. She picked out all my classes, she forced me to join a sorority, and she made me come home every weekend. Brett was now a freshman in high school, but his life with Mom was getting worse. While his friends were starting to date, go to parties, and hang out after football games, he had to be home and in bed by 8:30. And without me around, Mom took all her anger out on Brett, so he was getting a double dose of her rage.
I started being more open about it with my friends, my close friends. You know, I told them every once in a while, yeah, my mom beat me up today or something like that, you know.
He told us that she'd hit him and stuff, and he'd show us marks and stuff from her ring. I remember, yeah. And stuff. I think he was looking for something from us, because I don't think he understood what was going on. I mean, he worried about it, but he worried because he didn't understand why it was different, why his mom was different than our moms, and he knew, and he worried.
Brett's a tough kid. I mean, I don't think that it's the hitting. I don't think it was the point where he couldn't survive. I think it was kind of one of those, like, when you're told you're not good enough and you make somebody sick. I'd rather get hit than have my parents treat me sometimes the way Claudia did, because, I mean, it just makes you feel less than a person.
One day, Brett got a bad grade on a test and was afraid to come home. So he hid out in a friend's basement for a couple of days and left this note where Mom could find it. It read, in part, "I'm mad at myself. I always disappoint you. I'll just leave for a while and find someplace else to live. Maybe things will change after you and I get some time to think. Love, Brett."
Why do you think Brett ran away that time?
He ran away because he had so much pressure on him, and he just knew he couldn't do anything right. You know, schoolwork, he was overwhelmed with hard classes, never any time to get his work done. He, you know, was forced into every activity that he could get into, and I think he finally just succumbed to depression, thought, I got to get out of here.
Mom was furious that Brett ran away, and she took away what little freedom he had. Desperate for some relief, he snuck out of the house one night. It was the beginning of the end.
There was a party after a basketball game over at my girlfriend's house.
You knew that if you asked Mom if you could go to Sam's house, Samantha's house.
Yeah, she would say no.
Of course she would say no. She was a girl, and you had been kind of dating her.
Right. So I waited till everybody was asleep. It was about 11 o'clock, and I got on my bike. And, you know, I snuck out and got on my bike, and I rode all the way over there.
But you were there for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I was there for 10 minutes, and I think Dave was there. He said, man, he said, your mom's coming to get you.
She was convinced that I knew he was gone and it was my fault. And, well, I knew that there was a party at someone's house. So Mom and Dad and I piled into the car. On the way there, we saw Brett coming back.
I was riding home, and she pulled up in the car, and she got out, and I wasn't even off my bike yet. She started beating me up, you know, in the middle of the street. Mom pulled me off my bike and ripped off my Panther coat, you know, threw it in the ditch.
I was sitting in the back seat. She was pounding on him and, you know, throwing him against the car. And she opened the door and threw him in the back seat with me and just screaming at him all the way back home. She was telling him that he was from hell, and she couldn't believe that he was her son.
And when we got home, she was beating me up down at the bottom of the stairs. You know, she had a hold of my hair and she was punching me in the face.
Oh boy. What a picture. But pretty soon I just couldn't stand it anymore.
And Alyssa came out of her bedroom.
I just came flying out of my room and ran down the stairs and started screaming at her.
And she started screaming at Mom, telling her to quit and everything.
I just stood there and she was silent for a while because that had never happened to her before. But then she kind of came out of her shock and started yelling at me.
So, you know, that gave me a break. Mom ran up the stairs after her and started beating her up.
She pounded on me too, all the way up the stairs, and kicked me up the stairs and shoved me in my room, and then she went to your room because that's where you were.
My mom came in, she saw me on the phone. She took the phone out of the wall.
She didn't take it.
Well, she ripped it out of the wall. She threw it at me across the bed.
Mm-hmm.
She yelled some more at me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess the rest of the night that was it. And in the morning, I got up and she said, get out of bed, you little shit. That's what she said to me. I'm like, damn, you know, it's six o'clock in the morning now.
She's still mad. Saturday morning, she's still mad.
Saturday morning even. And I was like, oh man, you know, she's mad still. I was like, what am I gonna do? So I got up and I got dressed and everything and went down to eat breakfast, and she was steady beating me up down there when I was getting my breakfast ready, you know. And I decided, you know, this, because my mom, I didn't know when she was gonna quit, you know. I mean, she was just looking so crazy that day. I decided I gotta do something, you know. So I called 911. I didn't know what to do. I want to get the hell out of there. I said, I have to get out of here.
911 Omaha.
You know, my mom and I got into an argument and she started beating me.
What's your name?
Brett.
What's your last name, Brett?
Brett Ryder.
Ryder?
Yeah.
And I told him, my mom has been beating me up. I said, so you know, if you don't get me out of here, something bad's going to happen real soon. You know, I think somebody's going to get hurt.
How old are you?
I'm 15.
All right, you just stay there. All right?
Yeah.
All right, goodbye.
Bye.
So they sent a police car over, and he came in, he sat down at the kitchen table, and he said, I don't understand what the problem is here. I guess your son called in and said he was going to kill himself.
I sat down at the kitchen table and talked with Officer and Brett for a while because, I mean, I was flabbergasted. There was a policeman in my house.
My dad was sitting right there. I didn't want to tell him. I didn't want to say, well, man, my mom's been beating me up, you know. I didn't want to say that.
I kind of thought, Brad, why in the world didn't you tell me you're feeling so bad that you have to call the police, you know? I kind of felt that too, but then now I understand. He thought, well, what good would I do? I would tell Claudia, and Claudia would get all mad and angry and probably beat on him, you know? So he was in a helpless situation, and I was in a helpless situation, really, to know what to do.
So the cop, he just said, you know, you guys have got a nice house and everything. I don't see what the problem is. And he told me not to kill myself, and he left. And so I just felt helpless. He didn't get my clue, you know. It didn't help at all.
Mom came down just after they left, I think. But she was so upset. She said, what am I going to tell the neighbors? How am I going to explain that there are 2 police cars in my driveway, you know, on a Saturday morning? What's going on here? And just mad, just furious. Not even acknowledging the fact that Brett had called 911, and there was probably a reason that he had done it. Anyway, she was just screaming and ranting and raving. And, you know, Dad stood in the entryway with Brett and I and just put his arms around both of us, and all 3 of us were crying, and he said, oh, you guys just don't do anything to hurt yourselves. We'll get through whatever this is.
Christmas 1992. I had never seen Brett so withdrawn. I didn't realize how desperate he was becoming.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you asked, who would get you another one?
Let's see. There's Alyssa taking a bite. Put it in.
Yeah, the gravy's the best part, huh?
Is it good? Brett, what are you wearing? You got all dressed up for Christmas.
He did.
Ugly in.
And then, like, right after Christmas, I just started feeling like I didn't even look at her and see her as a person. She wasn't my mother. And I didn't see any love coming from her. And it started for me to be, I didn't have any love for her either, because it was just, she was just an object to me. Something that hurt me every day, you know.
What made you start thinking about killing Mom?
I had exhausted all my other efforts to get away from the situation, you know, and I was feeling helpless, you know, and I just didn't know what to do. And I was a freshman, you know, in high school, and I was thinking, man, 4 more years till I can finally get out of here, you know, that's too long. I said, I can't live with this anymore.
Yeah.
And I met a kid named Jason, and I kind of confided in him about some things, you know, that happened at home and stuff, you know, and how hard Mom was on me. I didn't tell him the whole story, you know, but I let him know that Mom beat me up sometimes, you know. And
yeah.
I think I asked him one time, you know, what am I supposed to do, you know? I can't live with this.
I started hanging out with Jason. He told us about all these weapons. He had a stun gun one time. I mean, and he flaunted it. Like, he became a real big man because of it. And then Brett started hanging out with him. I didn't approve of the way Brett's mom treated him. But Jason was always like, man, she's so bad. I hate her. We should do something. And I didn't want to say, you know, get away from this kid because he's trouble.
When Brett got towards the edge, he got more and more. It was like he was crying for help. He was trying to get into trouble, I think, just to get away, or just to force a confrontation or something. And it seemed like Jason was the only one that supported him.
We came up with all different kind of plans, and we were daydreaming about it, you know. And it was like a movie or something, you know, plotting a murder.
February 10th, 1993. Our last family vacation. We had no idea that 1 week later, Mom would be dead.
I think it was right after that I just kind of let it down, you know. I said, I can't even deal with this anymore. I was thinking, you know, I was gonna do it sometime, you know. I felt I need to do it, you know. Pretty soon I'm gonna be free.
How did you find out that Brett was thinking about killing Mom?
He told us.
What did he say?
He said he couldn't take it anymore. He was just sick of, you know, kind of, one time he said he was sick of her living through him.
Yeah.
And through you. He just said, he goes, I hate her. I want to kill her.
the clues came directly from his mouth, but I mean, none of us took it serious enough, I guess. I mean, because if anyone would have, it probably wouldn't have happened.
That day that it happened, I had got home from school, and I had this stun gun that friend had given to me, and I was at the kitchen sink. I was pouring a glass of milk and washing an apple or something. And she asked me what kind of grades I had that day, where my papers at, and I told her I got an 85 on my geometry quiz. She said, "An 85? How are you supposed to get, how are you supposed to get a 1 in that class if you can't even get an A on a quiz, You're supposed to know, She came around that little island there, and she started hitting me in the back of the head, and I just reached in my pocket and grabbed that stun gun, and I turned around and started zapping her with it. At first, she was just real shocked, She just was disbelief. And then, she started pounding on me again, and she was backing up, and I was zapping her with it. And she took off running towards the back door. I went back, and I grabbed a butcher knife. I went chasing after her, and she was already out on the deck, and I think she turned around to stop, and she had her hands up like this, like she was gonna, start pounding on me again. She was fighting me and stuff, and I just stabbed her in the chest, and I saw blood come out of her mouth and stuff, and I got, she had this real, she was just looking up, and the blood was coming out of her mouth, and she just died. And I turned around, I ran back in the house, and I dropped the knife on the floor, and I didn't know what to do, Right at that minute, right after I realized what I did, I was just kind of standing there in the kitchen, just real jumpy, I just felt real relaxed. It was the first time in my whole life that I ever felt like I was free. Nobody was controlling me. It was over. That's it. My mom would never beat me up again. My mom would never call me another name. I felt all right after I did that. But then I realized what actually had happened. I had committed the worst crime I could think of, killed my own mom. And I took off.
My arm's bleeding.
Is the blood squirting or flowing?
It's flowing out of there.
Flowing out of there. Well, hang on.
Not home.
Huh?
My dad's in South Dakota.
Is your mom at home?
Yeah, but she's hurt. I came home, and my mom and I got into an argument, and she started beating me.
Yeah.
And I said something wrong, and she grabbed a knife. I don't know what happened, man.
Okay, but she's stabbed in the she's stabbed in the chest over at her house, right?
Yeah.
And we got the rescue squad on the way. You just stay there, and we'll get some help over to your mom's house too.
The exact location she's at. Police are en route from 113th and I, Ida.
Very clear.
1708.
I regret a lot of things. The main thing I regret is just ignorance, and I don't even know that I could have done anything about that. I didn't realize that this was such a problem. I mean, I just thought, I can handle it, I'm handling it, Brett can handle it, and he's okay, and we'll just adapt to things as they come up, but when I left and Brett was here by himself, he couldn't adjust that fast and she was getting worse. So things just, that was the adjustment, to get rid of her.
It was at the funeral parlor. When Brent went in there, he just kind of walked up there and he stood like probably 5 or 6 feet away, and he looked. And he would take little tiny baby steps to try to get up to her. And he just couldn't get close. And he just stood back about 3 feet and he looked, and he just couldn't get close to her. Like he was still so afraid of her. Like she was going to come out of there, and get him or something, it was just terrible to watch that.
What followed was a big, sensational trial. In 2 weeks' time, our family's terrible secrets and painstaking cover-ups were all exposed. And the world as we knew it came crashing down. Brett's friend Jason turned on him and became the star witness for the prosecution. He testified that he and Brett came up with several plans to kill Mom, and his testimony was devastating to Brett's case. Waiting for the verdict was excruciating. I desperately wanted to be by Brett's side, but he was surrounded by police officers.
Not guilty of first-degree murder, but guilty of second. The judge believes Ryder intended to kill his mother, but that his talk of doing it beforehand was just that, talk, from a kid trying to cope with years of his mother's physical and emotional abuse. Before the verdict, the judge laid some of the blame on Brett's dad, Darwin Ryder, saying, "I hope you understand the substantial role you played in your terribly dysfunctional family."
I take full responsibility for my inaction, and I'm very sorry.
In court today, Ryder's attorney, Jim Davis, asked for leniency, asking that the court not be a hammer of vindictiveness, but an instrument of the law. Judge Mullen said he's received a number of letters asking for compassion, the most poignant from Brett's grandparents and his sister.
I tried to convey how much I love my brother, how harmless he is, and how lenient he should be with the sentence. Because I don't know anybody or of anybody that doesn't want him to come home as soon as possible.
When the judge handed down the sentence, I felt like my life had ended. Brett was going to prison for 11 to 20 years, and there was nothing I could do to help him. After the trial, I was left with questions I never dared to ask before. Questions I felt I had to resolve, no matter how difficult, for Brett's sake and my own.
In this film, we're not like mom bashing the whole time or anything, but we're showing how controlling she was and demanding she was to all three of us. So I want you to know that, but I still need to ask you anyway, how come, well, I didn't even ask you when we interviewed, at our own house. So, how come you as a parent didn't do any protective things for Brett and me? Or for Brett?
That question's been asked to me before in other interviews. What no one seems to understand in society, I'm not sure if you do, or Brett does, or anybody understands, is that my alternative was to throw away my whole life. That was my alternative, is to go to her and say, you're going to get help. And the kind of woman she was, she would have absolutely come apart, divorced me, left me, hated me for the rest of her life. I really feel that. And I would have had to sacrifice everything that I did and everything that I wanted in life that I built for 15 years. I would have given it all up. And there's always the hope and
you know, that it's going to be okay, it's going to get better, that life situation is going to change. Like I said, you went away to college. Hopefully it was going to get better. It got worse with Brett because of your absence. Hopefully he was going to survive that, and we were going to survive that, and he could go away to college, and then you guys could have your adult lives and get on with your lives. All those things I would think about, thinking it's going to get better.
I was kind of that way too. I mean, I kept thinking it would get better. And Brett seems to be the only one that was understanding that, there's no improvement anywhere. It's getting worse. I just feel like, not all the time, but sometimes I just feel like you should have. Because you're the dad. I didn't know.
And I understand why you feel that way, because I'm the dad, and I should have done something about it. I should have done something about it. That's so easy for me to look back and say now. All I can say is I know I should have done something, and I'm terribly, terribly sorry. No, I didn't. But I also cannot live in my life now feeling guilty for the rest of my life that, you know, that I didn't do something at the time. I know in my heart that I only did the best I could. And that I certainly didn't want anything like this to ever happen. And I had no idea it would.
I'm not going to resolve things right here and now in my mind, so.
I'm sure. And that's enough for me.
Okay. Thanks for coming over, Dad. That's my dad.
I realize now that Brett and me, and Dad too, will have to come to terms with the past in our own ways. Dad and I forgave Brett right away, but Brett still blames himself completely for what happened.
Killing someone, killing your mom, killing a parent, you know, is just an abomination. I just feel like, you know, I could have done something, should have done anything other than that. My dad and my sister forgive me, but it's hard to forgive myself for what I did. Most of the time I just wish I could go back in time. And I wouldn't even be here, my mom would be alive, everything would be different. Everything would be a lot better.
Our family has paid a heavy price for the secrets we kept. Certainly Mom didn't deserve to die, but Brett deserves a second chance to live. I'll never stop defending my brother.